everybody. Next up we play host to Olympiacos in the Thursday Night League. Kick-off is at 8 p.m, with TNT being the TV chappies, as is usually the case on these occasions. So Olympiacos then. Cast your mind back to when we last played them, and in the league they'd won 6, drawn 1 and had 1 abandoned. Top of the league and all looking rosy then. Well, things haven't been going quite so rosy for them in the intervening few weeks since we last played them. Firstly, there was the fallout from the abandoned game against Panathinaikos. You'll recall that, with the scores level, the Olympiacos supporters elected to start lobbing pyrotechnics onto the pitch, causing an initial suspension of the game and then, when the literal smoke had cleared from the pitch, abandonment as the Panathinaikos players somewhat understandably decided that their plans for the rest of their weekend did not include acting as moving targets for assorted gunpowder-based ballistics. The Greek authorities didn't hang around. First thing they did was to award the match to Panathinaikos with a 3-0 scoreline. They then docked Olympiacos a point, and then to round things off, they were made to play their next 2 games behind closed doors. When the metaphorical smoke had cleared from all that lot, they took a routine 3 points on the road at OFI, before the wheels fell off big time at the first of the closed-door home games, where they went down 4-2 to PAOK in a game that wasn't nearly as close as it sounds. And let's face it doesn't sound close in the first place. 2 very late goals for Olympiacos lent the scoreline an air of, well, whatever it is that is 1 step below respectability, I think. This has left them sitting in second place, 4 points behind Panathinaikos, level on points with AEK, and a point above the aforementioned PAOK. Hell of a difference from a few weeks back then. I won't harp on about their squad again. We had a look the other week and Daisy threatened me with all sorts of sanctions if I made her do it all over again. They will see a return to the European squad for Andreas Ntoi. The Athens-born central defender has been capped at age level by both Albania and Greece. First Albania under 17, then Greece under 17, and under 19. And then he went back to Albania to play for the under 21s. Make your mind up is the phrase that leaps to mind. He missed out in the corresponding fixture a couple of weeks back, having picked up a red in the match against TSP. Enough of them, let's move on swiftly to the wild and wacky world of association football. And the big talking point has been the frankly bonkers match at the Toilet Bowl between Spurs and Chelsea. 5 goals, 5 disallowed goals, 2 sendings off and a few injuries, followed by the somewhat baffling sound of Spurs fans applauding their side off the pitch. Now, yes, Spurs are in the game a lot longer than you might have thought for a team down to 9 men. However, that situation owed less to anything Spurs did and just about everything to the fact that it took Chelsea longer to work out how to beat the suicidally high defensive line employed by their opponents than it does for the average VAR check to complete these days. Eventually, the penny dropped that a ball over or through the defensive line onto a runner from deep would mean that players would not get called offside. Now, if that had happened a lot earlier, Spurs would have conceded even more than the 4 they actually did. Still, it's an ill wind. Their marketing department will be able to get their end-of-season Blu-rays and DVDs into the club shop in time for Christmas. Talking of self-inflicted foot wounds, this brings us on to, well, us last weekend. I mean, having conceded to Mopé of all people as a result of a mishit shot that Areola would have saved had it been hit in the manner originally intended, we pulled ourselves back into the game with a goal from Kudos of such quality one was really looking forward to seeing it over and over again on Match of the Day on Saturday night. Only the BBC, in its infinite wisdom, preferred to show Mopé's nod-in from a miss-hit. A bizarre spot of editing and production that beckoned belief, really. We then had our second goal, which, disgracefully, VAR took longer than it did for Chelsea to figure out how to break a halfway line offside trap to decide that, try as they might, they couldn't find anything wrong with it. 2-0 up and well in control when a superb piece of counter-attacking football saw Antonio and Benrahma make a complete Horlicks of what for either one of them should have been just a tap-in at the far post. I've looked at it several times and I'm damned if I can work out what happened, only that it shouldn't have. That was the turning point, really. Had we gone 3-1 up, I've got little doubt we would have won. We didn't, and we didn't. In the second half, Brentford worked out that Zuma hadn't actually made it onto the pitch, and with neither of our two central defenders on duty noted for their aerial prowess, they peppered the box with crosses with sadly predictable results. I would add that, though he had no effect on the eventual result, referee Thomas Bramwell turned in a depressingly familiar awful performance. I would say substandard, but frankly such poor efforts are becoming increasingly par for the course these days. Particular highlights last weekend were Emerson getting fouled in the build-up for the first goal, something else that was conveniently edited out of the mix by Match of the Day, and then getting booked for showing the referee the stud marks from the foul. Then Souček getting booked for being stamped on, and even the boss getting yellowed because the fourth official seemed determined on getting in his way. You can add that to an apparent ignorance of what the word advantage means in football. Now, I know players and managers always moan at referees during a game, but years of watching football do give you a sense of when a player has a point, and we saw that in abundance last weekend. It's performances like these from officials that are the big problem in football today, not the headline-grabbing, self-entitled displays of utter hypocrisy from the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal on the rare occasions a dubious decision actually goes against them. I appreciate poor old Howard Webb has effectively been handed a hospital pass by PGMOL, with Riley spending years prioritising the protection of the incompetent over the improving of standards before his retirement, hanging Webb out to dry as he tries to make something out of the disaster zone he's inherited. However, we really can't go on like this. Time perhaps to experiment with one of those chimpanzees that can tell you what they fancy for tea by pressing an appropriate button. The PGMOL chimps, perhaps, rather than the PG Tips chimps. Though in current form, I think they may have started this already. And so on to this week. Zoom has only trained lightly following the knee problem that kept him out of the mix at the weekend. 50-50 with a late fitness test is the vibe there. Paquetá and Alvarez will both return to the squad, having used an out-of-date copy of the Kevin Nolan guide to getting Christmas off in preparing their calculations for a Yuletide suspension. So Zuma apart, it's pretty much a full squad to select from. In the previous match, I believe that Mr. Moyes selected what was effectively a second 11 in an act of underestimation that failed to account for a side that raises their game in front of a noisy crowd. This time, I believe that we'll field what will be the strongest 11 possible on this occasion. Fabianski in for Areola probably being the only concession to rotation. With that in mind, the players seem to be up for this one big time, umbrage having been taken at the tone of the home side's celebrations, amongst other things. I saw nothing in the first match to persuade me that full-strength irons wouldn't prevail, all things being equal. So the £2.50 I was going to spend on a bag of nuts for the PGMOL chimps will instead be going on a home win. Make it 3-1 to us, please, Mr. Winston. Enjoy the game.